It's a bit of a weird time for contracts in wrestling. We've got very public bidding wars coming up for the likes of Will Ospreay and MJF, as well as the TV deal with the NWA and the CW, which I talked about a few days ago in a video. The NWA was apparently blindsided by the NXT announcement that was made yesterday as I'm making this video, so hopefully we'll get some more info on that soon. A story that came about today might be the weirdest contract story yet though, as two luchadors that are most associated with AAA, but also for a time worked for MLW, were under the impression that they were under contract still, but found out today that they had been released in May of this year, 6 months ago. Let's get into who these wrestlers are first. Aramis is someone I first saw in MLW and I'm a fan of. In fact, buried in my YouTube channel is a music video I made of an MLW match he had with another talent I'd only just discovered, El Hijo del Vikingo, who's also made a lot of progress since those days. Reading more into this, I found that Aramis was at one point due to work for AEW. I found a Wrestling Inc. article stating, according to Dave Meltzer, that his deal had been allowed to expire, but I couldn't find any trace of him wrestling for AEW. However, per Fightful a year earlier, the story appears to be that he was supposed to sign in early 2020, but this was halted due to the pandemic. It's also worth noting that Tony Khan around that time signed a lot of wrestlers during the pandemic, some to be part of the crowds for his shows, or to wrestle on his 2+ hour episodes of Dark that they ran back then. The Wrestling Inc. article also has a quote from Khan, where he states that he kept many wrestlers under contract that he wasn't using on television, so it's not very clear. But he was, by all accounts, on AEW's radar, and has since worked for PWG, and even came to England last year for Progress. Ares, if I'm honest, I'm less familiar with, but his biggest US exposure seems to have come from GCW, who he's wrestled for quite a lot over the past year. He's also worked some for NWA. Once you see Ares, you tend not to forget him, as he doesn't just look unique, but he has a very interesting style of wrestling, with counters and moves I've never seen anyone else do before. The long and the short of it is that both he and Aramis are really good wrestlers, and should hopefully be working for bigger companies soon, especially since, as Aramis noted upon discovering this today, they are in fact both free agents. Now, as I noted, all of this came about earlier today as of me making this video, and it came about when Ares posted a lengthy message to the general public on Twitter in both Spanish and English. It's here if you want to read it, but the TLDR of it is that he hasn't been used for MLW for 18 months, which is about accurate, and the same for Aramis, and he was formally asking for a written release. There's also an odd part where Ares claims he was, in his wording, ineligible to work in the US when his deal started. But thinking back on it, he started working for MLW during the Azteca series, I think, which were episodes of MLW shows taped in Mexico, again linked with AAA. Soon after, MLW responded, again by Twitter, stating that the pair had been released in May of this year, and it was AAA's responsibility to inform them, which evidently they did not. The only thing I can think of that might explain, but not quite justify this weird passing of the buck, might be if there was a language barrier, and MLW just thought to pass it on through AAA. That's still not great though, is it? I mean, imagine thinking you were signed to a company that you hadn't been for 6 months. I would guess from this that they were paid per appearance, in which case the deal must have been for some sort of US exclusivity. Ares doesn't explain that in his statement, but that would be the reason I can think of why he's so adamant that he wants his release in writing. Either way, it's a bit of a weird situation, made even weirder when you factor in that MLW in September announced that they had begun working with CMLL, the other major lucha promotion. Now admittedly, I'm no expert on lucha libre, but I do know that CMLL and AAA hate each other, to the point where wrestlers from the two companies can't work on the same shows, or sometimes they just can't be in the same matches. Recently, AEW also started working with CMLL, when they brought Mystico in, having already worked with AAA for a long while. I wonder if that should have been a red flag for Aramis and Ares, who apparently were released 4 months before this. Either way, if they were working for MLW, despite not being used for about a year by May 2023, the company probably should have informed them themselves. Interestingly though, another story came out today stating that one of MLW's top stars, Alex Hammerstone, who requested his release a while back, hasn't been used since July of this year, and that communication between him and the company has been, quote, sparse to put it nicely. So it seems their former world champion hasn't been able to get much clarification either. To be a little fair, MLW's had a tough time of it this year, after effectively being pushed out of a TV deal with Reels after that channel joined with Peacock, which WWE has exclusivity for, then proceeding to sue WWE in return, which has dragged on for months at this point. I do like MLW shows when I get to see them, and the same for both Aramis and Ares. So let's just hope for good things for all involved, starting with MLW maybe upgrading the company's fax machine. Thank you for watching yet another wrestling channel. If you enjoyed this, please comment, like or subscribe.